Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Why Coaching is the New Leadership Style. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world and giving up your precious time for us. We're going to take about 45 minutes, and the recording is being recorded, so you'll be able to get access to this afterwards if you need it. But let's start looking into this question. So why coaching is the new leadership style? Before I do that, what I'd like to do is just give you an overview of myself and I guess the context of where our thinking and observations are coming from. So in summary, 20 years of coaching experience across all levels from shop floor to C-suite. And we've worked extensively, or I've worked extensively across all three sectors. And very much I'm lucky that I love what I do and do what I love. And that is coaching. So that's a little bit about me, where the context comes from, and I'll be sharing some of my experiences, observations and perspectives as we go through this webinar. So who are we? Coaching Focus Group. We're a coaching-led consultancy with a global reach, and we are experts in workplace performance coaching. And that we provide one-to-one coaching, team coaching, coaching and mentoring skills, and coaching and mentoring qualifications. And simply summed up, we have a purpose of coaching for a better tomorrow. And these are some of the partners and some of the organizations that we've worked with. And this is where some of the experience, observations and views will be coming from. And there may be a few sort of stories, case studies that I share with you just to reinforce our perspective and the view of why coaching is the new leadership style. What I want to do is give you an overview of the new world challenges that we're all facing. And I use the word world because it's not just a local, but it is a global challenge that we're facing now in this current climate. And also, what does that mean for leaders and your leaders? Also explain the use of power, because power has shifted in this new world, but we need to understand what power means and how our leaders are utilizing that to have the psychological impact, positive or otherwise. We also need to understand why coaching, rather than managing, is a default style now required. And we also need to look at the other side of the equation, not just about the leader, but those that they lead, and make sure that they are ready, willing, and able to be led and to be coached, so that we lead to a positive impact on the coaching that we implement within the organization. I guess you'd all agree with me that the new world is a very disruptive environment and probably one of the most disruptive times in history. It's been fascinating for me to see how the pandemic has evolved and has impacted the way in which we operate and the ways of working. But I think the other thing that we need to appreciate and understand, and has got mired by the global pandemic, is that there's a fourth industrial revolution upon us and going on. And I'm going to talk more into that because I think that's also changing the way in which we work and the channels that we work through. The other element is that climate concerns are a reality. There's a cost of living, certainly in the UK, and there's sadly a war in Europe. And all these things are, if you like, creating this disruptive change and creating the perfect storm. So it would be easy to summarize that the pace and impact of this change is phenomenal, and it shows no sign of slowing down. And your leaders find themselves in challenging times as never before. So we need to unpick that, explore that, and understand what the new way of leading is for your leaders. So what does the new world mean? As I talked about the fourth industrial revolution, I think we now live in a digitally and technology-led world. Old practices of working are now mostly irrelevant, and that includes the leadership style and the way that we work with individuals. And as we're seeing with the Great Resignation, talent attraction, engagement and retention will be critical to organizational success and sustainable performance. And organizations, and certainly HR professionals and leaders, need to be conscious of this. And what we're noticing in a lot of organizations that we work with is that people are demanding empowerment, and they push back against authority. They don't like to be told what to do. Paradoxically, though, what's happening is they don't know what to do with that power, and they want to be told what to do. So I think we find ourselves in a fascinating flux and transition, with those understanding how to lead, but those also that are being led, understanding how they want to be led and what they do with that new power that they are demanding. I'm also noticing that what used to be called soft skills, but from my perspective, human skills, and again, we'll talk more into that as we go through, are going to be invaluable and are critical. My concerns are, as we go into recession, whether that's in the UK or again globally, that all those soft skills and that training is taken away from budgets. But I think that's the worst thing that the individuals and organizations can do. And I think they need to think twice before making that decision. I think also there need to be better ways, and I don't just mean through the webinars and other channels, you know, online, but better ways of communicating and connecting and collaborating in an open-mindedness way, and also come away from a linear way of thinking or leading, where there's exponential thinking. And I think those skills will be required. And they'll be required because we're living in a new world, which is very chaotic. There's little certainty. And change, I know this is a sort of a saying that a lot of people say, but change seems to be the only constant. And with that, we need to develop agile, flexible, adaptable ways of working, and leaders that are comfortable in being uncomfortable in an element of chaos. And if you look on our website, you'll see another webinar we're doing, which is all around leading in that chaos and how do you create that agile and flexible and adaptable way of working. But to do that, you need a certain mindset. And we're going to talk into that mindset of a leader that we're seeing come through within many organizations that we're working with. The other challenge that we face, that we're moving away from, or something I see it with people demanding it again, is a shift from organizational growth to personal growth and well-being. Leadership is becoming humanized. It's becoming tailored. It's becoming on a one-to-one rather than one-to-many. People want to feel valued. They want to feel special in many ways. And as organizations, as leaders, we need to start thinking about how we do this. So the key question is that new world and some of those changes that I'm sure you're all seeing as well. What does that mean? Not just for HR professionals, but for leaders. And also, as we go on to the end of this webinar, what does that mean for individuals that are being led, your colleagues and other people within your organization? So this isn't our view. This is a view from Gartner. If you are aware of that organization, it's a website that they do a lot of analysis. That is Gartner. The link is down the bottom of the slide. The slides will be shared afterwards. And I found this research that they did really interesting from the last 12 months and identifying the trends that they're noticing within the workplace. Trend number one is, no surprise, hybrid ways of working. And that's creating a business transformation, not just in the way that people work, but in the way that they want to be led and dealt with as individuals. So organizations are seeking or having the challenge of transition, helping people transition to new ways of working. It's become called hybrid ways of working. What I find fascinating is that a lot of organizations are still trying to work out the hybrid policy, and whether that's 2 days in the office, 3 days, or how do you create equality across a workforce where some might be in the field, some might be traveling, etc. But it needs to go beyond just the policy, and supporting leaders need to support people through that transition into those new ways of working, and bearing in mind that they are also going through that transition and having the challenges themselves. The other trend that was found by Gartner was that more and new skills are needed. And I talked about those human skills, those soft skills, skills development, supporting people to be able to operate effectively in that new world. Yes, the technical skills will need to be built in this sort of fourth industrial revolution, but how do you develop the right human skills, and certainly the leadership skills? And you'll see a trend coming through of recent work and research done 2 weeks ago. The other element, and I'm sure that you're seeing this within your organization, is workforce health, well-being. And sadly, we're seeing increases of mental health and people with depression, anxiety, and all those other elements. So how do you create leaders for the future that are able to understand, be able to be aware of some of those symptoms and the right approach to take, i.e. to signpost. And have you as an organization, as a leader, got the right skills, tools, and opportunity to tap into employment assistance programs and other places that you might well signpost individuals to. I also mentioned this as this is a trend that not only that we're seeing, but also that Gartner are seeing, and that's employees want to feel understood and valued. And I've used the term here, people want to feel empowered. And I find the word empowered, certainly in this current climate, very interesting because it does create a different dynamic and a different psychological contract between the leader and the follower. But I think here what we need to do is make sure that people feel understood and valued on a one-to-one basis, on an individual basis. And that links into trend number 5, where people are diverse and we need to embrace that diversity. We need to better understand that diversity. So people feel that it's equal and it feels inclusive, and leaders need to be aware of that. And I know that's been around now, thankfully, for a few years, but I think it's coming to a peak where people want both to feel valued and included in the way in which they're treated and they are led, and leaders need to be understanding that. So those are the 5 trends over the last 12 months or 11 months of 2022 that have emerged from the research. And I'm certainly, from what we're seeing, I'm also seeing these within the organizations that we work with. Sadly, what I'm not seeing is many organizations developing the leadership approach or the right culture and mindset to attend to these 5 trends. They sort of do a little bit of what I call sheep dipping, just to attend to it, like a tick box exercise. But very few organizations are thinking about their development and certainly their coaching and using that in a strategic way to really facilitate the learning, development, performance around these 5 areas. This is recent research, again from Gartner, and I found this article, and we can share this later on. Interesting to see the top 5 priorities from 600 HR professionals across the globe when questioned around what their priorities were for 2023, and 60% of them felt that leader and manager effectiveness is the key focus for them in 2023. What I found interesting also about this research is that it didn't mention coaching. And that brings in another challenge, I think, in that a lot of HR professionals have a lack of knowledge how to use coaching and how to utilize that coaching strategically. A lot of HR professionals and leaders that I work with very much still see it as a skill set. Coaching for me is very much a mindset. And this is one of the challenges that we're going to be facing as we go into 2023. And we need to move into a new way of operating as a different leader, as a new leader in a new world. And for me, that new way of leading is leadership coaching rather than leadership managing. But it's interesting in this well-regarded and respected company and research organization where they still use the terms leader and manager. But I'll talk more about that as we go through. The other element that you can see for number 2 is organizational and change management. You know, there is a changing world. We need to support leaders and people through that change. And as we know, change is not easy, especially when we're talking about a cultural change, asking people to operate in a different way. And again, we need to be leading that change rather than change management, which is a term that they use here. My experience over the 20 years, and certainly in the last 3 years, is you can't tell people what to do. They start pushing back. And if you start managing that change and trying to force that change, people will rebel. And we're not just seeing that in organizations, but we're also seeing that in countries, and you only have to look on the news to see evidence of that. So again, what I'd like to be seeing, certainly with the research and the movement with regards to leadership style, is change leadership, not change management, and people making change more human rather than process or transactionally orientated. I'd also like to see, and I'm starting to hear organizations talk about it, rather than having change because of the financial gain, rather than doing change for the good of a number of sustainable and other elements that we want. You're also seeing all these other people things, employee experience, recruiting, and the future of work. But as I say, leader and manager effectiveness at that number one spot, 60%. So I think it would be fair to say that we're starting to see a new world, but a new shift to new ways of leading. And from what I'm picking up and just noticing with speaking to senior leaders and HR professionals is there is a movement towards more focus on a human element of the human resources. People don't want to be utilized as a resource. They don't want to be managed and a number. They want to be treated as a human being, and a realization that all human beings are vulnerable and leaders need to understand and be compassionate to that vulnerability. I also think what we're starting to see is people realizing that they're not just a human doing, but they are a human being, and they want to be rather than just do. And a lot of organizations need to, and leaders need to appreciate that there does need to be that work-life balance to make sure that the performance that we're asking of that human being is sustainable over a longer time, not just a number or a resource that can be leveraged and utilized. And we need to be leading in a different way. And that way, for me, is leadership coaching rather than leadership management. Aligned with that, and I hear this a lot from a number of organizations that we work with, is coming away from a command and control way of operating and being to more of a connected and collaborative way. And at the heart of moving towards connected and collaborative is trust. And when I talk to senior individuals, one of the key things that they challenge with is making sure that they maintain and keep that trust in place. And some of the hard decisions in a chaotic and changing world is that some of that trust has been broken. And that creates a longer term issue if you're going to create collaboration and connectivity where people are willing to disclose and to share and to contribute in a collaborative way. And my view, and this is a strong view I hold, not only from the research, but also from what people are telling me and showing me, is that there needs to be less management and more coaching. And what I'm not saying here is that management is dead. I'm certainly not saying that, because there is definitely a need for times where line managers need to manage. But my experience is that line managers manage more than they coach or they lead. And I think the balance of that way of leading is starting to shift and is having to shift. It's just a shame that we've had to have 2 years of pandemic and industrial revolution to force that change, rather than leaders realizing that that's the best way to get people to create sustainable performance. So I want to unpick that just to give you a sort of understanding about where we are now with line management and leadership responsibilities, and I think where we need to be moving to, and explain some of the psychological impacts that has and the difference that you can then create by moving to more of a leadership coaching approach. And just to enforce that, this is further research that came out of Gartner, and I love the term that they use here, which is human leadership, which is another term for my phrase of human being. You know, a leader that's authentic, you would have heard of, I'm sure, authentic leadership. A leader that is empathetic, and I would also add on there compassionate, and also a leader that's able to be adaptive. So these are the, if you like, the values, the skills, the soft skills, the human skills of human leadership. And for me, those three areas are core things, not just of leadership, but also of coaching. And by creating a coaching environment and a coaching mindset, not just for leaders, but for those that they lead, we then start to be able to be more adaptive, more agile, more flexible. And we start to be able to operate and be more comfortable in a chaotic world in which we now live in. So we're talking about leadership, and I made the statement, a bold statement, that we'll start to see, and we need less management and more coaching. So I would say that as line managers, and not just as a leader, but as a line manager, individuals wear three hats. The first hat they wear is obviously that they lead. And the leadership hat is all about setting that vision, that purpose, that authenticity. It's about articulating a game worth playing. And what I mean about that is that individuals, certainly Gen Z and Gen Alpha, as it's now being called, want something that's purposeful. They want something that's meaning. They just don't want direction that helps to build shareholder value or to develop more profit and bottom line value. They want something that's more meaningful, more human, something that adds to the society and the world at large. So leaders need to articulate what that game is that you're asking individuals to play, and not only what that game is, but another important element here, which I see missing a lot with leaders, is why you're asking me to play it. What's the purpose of that? So purpose, vision, a strategy, strategic intent. That for me has always been and will be reinforced now as we go into this new world of the role of a line manager and what we do as a leader. The other hat, which I'll explain my qualitative data that I've got from this, is the hat of manager. And this is a hat which is over the years has been perfected by many line managers. And when I ask them the question on a percentage, level, how much time do you wear your management hat? And I was with a client yesterday where the answer was 95%. That's high. And that made an interesting discussion with that client. The normal sort of level is around 80%. And we've done this program, we've done a program looking at this model in many ways. So we must have had thousands of people, leaders go through it. And their view is that they manage 80% of their time. Now, I want you just to hold on to that number, because it will be important to show you the impact that it has when people are being led and managed and also coached as we go through. So 80% people manage. And for me, the management hat is very much around the rules of the game, because what managers will do is keep people to process, to policies, to targets. They would make sure that people deliver the how in a tactical, controlled way. The manager is in control. They have the authority, and they're using their authority and power to get the how done. The third hat, and this is the hat that I see least used, and certainly with our experience going into organizations, the hat that people need to be developed around most. And this is the coaching hat. And the coaching hat is quite simply a hat that enables people to play their best game. And putting the three together, we've got, leading in a way that enables people to know what game you want them to play and why. People understand the rules and the boundary of that game. And remember, the game is changing. It's a new game now. And also they are supported and coached in a way that brings their best game to the fore in a sustainable way. So these are what I call the three hats. And in the past, and still currently, and I think we're in transition here, it was the lead and manage hats. So people were leading in a management approach. So it used to be very much to the left. What's changing, and I think that organizations will need to wake up to this, is that leading is now needing leadership coaching rather than leadership management. The important thing to remember, though, with all these hats and this model and our approach that you take, and I'm certainly not saying it's just coaching, because it isn't. And I do challenge organizations and clients that come to us wanting to create a coaching culture, because at the heart of this Venn diagram is performance. So actually what organizations need to be creating is a performance culture, not a coaching culture. Because a performance culture, or should I be more clear, in a sustainable performance culture is what we need to be building. You need people that can lead effectively, manage effectively, and coach effectively. The challenge is that most people manage very effectively, a light touch on the leading, and very little on effective coaching. So the whole system and DNA that people feel within an organization is feeling that they're being managed, that they're being done to, that they're being controlled. Because the other element here that we need to be very conscious of is right down the center of that model, to the left of that line, i.e. the side of the manage, is when I manage, I'm leading with my authority, with my power. And so I, as the line manager, have that power. And if I have that power, it means that I'm not necessarily giving the power to the other person. So I'm disempowering people. And one of the trends and one of the demands that we're seeing is people want to be empowered. So when we go over to the other side to coach, the coaching approach is very much to give empowerment, ownership, responsibility to the individual, to the player, if you like. The challenge I'm finding is that those individuals don't know what to do with that power when you give that to them. And that's another challenge, and I think an influx point that we're at with this new world. So in simple terms, what I'm saying is that organizations need to get a better balance of the way in which their leaders lead, because I would say that the main focus from from the research and sort of evidence that we've got is that most organizations lead from a management perspective. Those that will be successful and be able to be agile, adaptable and flexible and operate in that new world will be those that can develop leadership coaching, but also understand how to use that power and that authority, that management approach with rules and boundaries in an effective and an appropriate way. And we call this model the three-legged stool of performance, because like any stool, you need three key stable elements. And it's not a third, but it is the ability for line managers and leaders to understand what is relevant and when and how to use that. The challenge comes that most managers or most leaders go into work and they place their management hat on. And therefore they're constantly using that authority. And when they do see, even if they do identify a coaching opportunity, they're not quick enough to put their coaching hat on because they maintain with or hold their management hat. And what I think, or what we suggest to individuals is, and develop leaders to be able to do, is to go into work with their coaching hat on and keep that as the default setting. Because when a coaching moment and an opportunity comes to help someone to learn, develop, and to perform, you're already, or that leader's already wearing that coaching hat. Because your leaders will find it easier to take off that coaching hat and put the management hat on rather than the other way around. So one of the things that we develop leaders to be able to do is go in and be effective in utilizing that coaching hat, and obviously knowing when to lead and obviously knowing when to manage. So shifting the default setting, changing the operating system to a way of leading in a leadership coaching way that is relevant to the new world on which we're operating. So that's one side of the equation, if you like. The other side of the equation and the other part of this is, what does that mean for those that your leaders lead? Because I very much see leadership and certainly coaching as a dance. And in a dance, there's always two parties. And the other party that your leaders will be dancing and your coaches will be dancing with is the coachee or the follower in this instance. And those individuals want empowerment. They want to take responsibility. They want to have that control. They want the freedom to do whatever they want to do in a way that enables them to play their best game. But what I've noticed is that because people have never had it, they don't know what to do with it when they've got it. So organizations need to make sure that they support people to understand what being empowered means and what being responsible, and dare I say it, accountable for things that they're being asked to achieve for the organization and the game that they're being asked to play. And if you think about it, it's not their fault. And if you think about it, it seems so natural that we've got to where we are, and the changes are causing that, and people are struggling through that change. Because, you know, when we were children, our parents, our guardians would tell us what to do. When we went to school, our teachers would tell us what to do. When we go into work, our managers tell us what to do. So we've created this operating system right from early stages that waits to be told what to do. It doesn't think for itself. And therefore now it's being empowered and being asked to take responsibility and think for itself, be creative, be agile, you know, think on your feet, use your own initiative. They're like rabbits in a headlight. They don't know what to do. And when we work with lots of organizations, they forget the other part. And it's something that is always missing from any leadership or coaching strategy, is developing the coachee or the follower. How do you become a great coachee? How do you become a great team player or follower? And it's the other half of the equation that we always seem to miss. The other paradox here is people don't want to be told what to do. But then they say, when they get stuck and they don't know what to do, is just tell me what I need to do. So again, we see that type of behavior coming through. And this will be a transition that I think over the next 2-3 years' time, organizations will need to make, so that people don't look to be told what to do, but they use their initiative and they get on with it. And at the same time, if leaders lead in that way, then it gives leaders that time, because people are getting on with it without having to come and ask them, what do I do next? Or what do I need to be doing? It gives leaders that spare free time to be more strategic and fulfill their leadership role, rather than constantly managing individuals and projects, etc. The other thing that I'm finding here is that people do want responsibility. They want that ownership. But what they don't want is to be held accountable. And this is one of the paradoxes that we face when leadership coaching and managing, and trying to identify a great way where we can give clear targets where people are accountable, and realize that if they're not delivering on the outputs, you know, the impact that has on others, but also the results of that. And that's very much, I would say, sits with the management hat, where you do need sometimes to have difficult conversations, and you do need to take more of a management approach to your leadership. So one of the things that I'd ask you all to think about, and because it's a big part of the puzzle that I think organizations are missing on, and they very rarely spend time and money developing coachees and team players, it very much goes into leadership development, is how do you get individuals ready, willing, and able to be coached? Because the utopia for me is that coaching isn't, and leadership isn't hierarchical, is that everybody within an organization not only knows how to coach, but also knows how to be coached. And, you know, it's not just the line manager coaching those that report into him or her. It's that everybody is having a coaching conversation, and a conversation that's focused on helping everybody to play their best game. Now, that's the perfect utopia, and that's something that we're working towards in the coaching focus group. And that certainly sits under our purpose and our core values of coaching for a better tomorrow. So that gives you an overview of my views, what I'm certainly noticing, backed up by some research by Gartner. I'm sure there's lots more out there. Another good site you may want to go to is Gallup, and they have some great research. And they also show that leadership style, how that impacts employee engagement, and the importance of making sure that your leaders lead in a human way rather than a management way. But if there are any questions, either on this call or afterwards, very happy to take them. Down in the left-hand side, you'll see Q&A, and I've got the question sheet open. So if there are any questions, I'd love to hear those, to create some discussion and views from yourselves. Okay, so no questions. So hopefully I've answered all your questions, or you're still processing all the information that I've given you. If you do think of any question and want to talk to us about anything that we spoke about, then please do get in touch. As I say, we are experts in workplace performance coaching, and we work with a lot of organizations to help to develop that leadership coaching approach. We also have some webinars coming up in the next year, so January and in February and March, areas that are very much focused on what we've spoken about. There's also an open program, so if an individual or you've got a small group of people that want to go on as leader as coach and learn how to be that leadership coaching style, then please do get in touch. That program's available. Or if you want to run an in-house and talk about how you leverage leadership coaching or use coaching intelligently to maximize your return on the investment, then again, myself and my team would love to talk that through and make sure that you maximize the use of coaching in this new world that we now face. But thank you for attending. And as I say, we'll put the slides and everything up, send those to you, and they'll be on our website available as a webinar as well. So thank you very much and have a good rest of this afternoon.